What's going on, Badger Nation? Welcome to the PPC Den podcast, where for over 225 episodes, we've been your home for all things Amazon PPC tips, tricks, and optimizations to make your Amazon advertising a little bit easier, a little bit more profitable. Today on the show, I am really excited to have my friend back, Elizabeth Greene from Junglr, an Amazon PPC agency, where we talk about the major differences between managing a large ASIN account, large SKU account on Amazon advertising versus a small ASIN account. There's so many uniquenesses that happen when you're managing a 5 ASIN account versus 50 versus 50,000. And I sort of end with a challenge that if you cannot decide what actions to take inside your Amazon advertising, through reports, through dashboards, through ratios. So basically not looking at your Amazon advertising, looking at all these reports to determine your next steps to take inside your advertising account, you don't know Amazon advertising. So this is a really cool episode. I think it'll expand the way that you think about your own campaigns, regardless of the size. As always, you can get all of our episodes categorized, organized in the Google Sheet in the description below. Have a good one. And I'll see you inside the Badger Den.
I've launched campaigns and picked keywords. I've got my bids, set placements too. And bad mistakes, I've made a few. I've had my share of wrong keywords, but I've got through. We are the PPC Den, my friends, and we'll keep up the rising to the end. You two are the PPC Den. We talk about Amazon. No time for radicals, 'cause we fix the gambit of the world.
Elizabeth, what's up? Welcome. And thanks for coming back on the PPC Den podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. These are always a blast. It's always my favorite.
I want to say thank you. I want to say you got a new office orientation. You have this wonderful new bookshelf,
Yes, I do.
new lighting setup. Looks fantastic. I have to ask about the pieces of paper.
The pieces of paper taped to the wall, yes. So for those of you listening in on audio, I have pieces of print paper taped to my wall. The reason why is there is a logo coming soon that I'm super stoked about. And I'm really happy with, because I was measuring out like the size of it and the scale and just making sure it was going to look good. And I got the paper in a spot that I was super happy with. So I probably should just like put marks on the wall and take it down. But I was like, I don't want to lose the placement. So they're just stuck to the wall.
I think it works. I think it works indeed. I think maybe skip the logo and just keep the paper.
Or just like draw with Sharpie.
Just draw it
On
with
the wall.
Sharpie. Ask your kids. Yes. Elizabeth, I'm very excited that you suggested this topic that we're about to dig into, because I think it doesn't get talked about enough. And I actually think because it's rare, right? If you were to sort of do the distribution of how many products a company selling on Amazon has, I mean, I don't know definitively, but my guess would be like 80% of the companies have less than 20 products. And then, the top 5% of companies selling on Amazon in terms of SKU count have like 50,000 plus. So it's often hard to interact with some of those very large SKU accounts. But I also think a lot of the principles apply at any size, even if you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 ASINs. A lot of the things that we're going to be talking about, thinking about and strategizing and working through very large SKU counts, I think it's going to apply regardless of how big your account size is. And I'm curious, do you remember the first very large account you worked on. And maybe it's in terms of spend, maybe it's in terms of SKU count or ASIN count. Maybe it's even in terms of entity count, like how many keywords and
Hmm.
product targets there were, campaigns there were. Do you remember the first, like your first account? I assume your first account was, normal size, a couple
Hmm.
ASINs. And then eventually someone came across your inbox, was like, hey, I have 1,000 SKUs. Help me out. Do you remember seeing that for the first time?
Yes, I do. I kind of worked up to it. Like, I think in the beginning, I was managing, one like smaller account, like you said, a couple products. There was another account that had large in volume in terms of the ad spend and like total keywords that they were advertising on, but it only had, I think, like two SKUs associated with it. Eventually, they
Mm-hmm.
added a couple more products, but they definitely had like a couple, like what you consider like hero products. And then maybe work my way up to 20 products, which at that point you're kind of getting into scale. And then definitely when we started getting into managing clothing brands, that's when rubber meets the road and you got to figure stuff out. I think a lot of the things that I talk about, or the things that the ways I kind of look at accounts, come through us having to just do that trial by fire, and then also learning from the brand owners, because yes, we're managing the ads, and that has, as we're going to talk about, lots of complexities, but really trying to understand from brand owners who do deal with large SKU accounts. They're dealing with inventory. Like, inventory planning on clothing is no joke. Shipments, tracking, things going in and out of stock all the time. There's just so much complexity. And when you get into either just large SKU variation listings, or if you're just, maybe you have a bunch of single listings, but there's just a heck ton of them, at some point, looking at the data becomes just so overwhelming. Or logging into the account, there's too many campaigns to make sense of, and so you have to figure out a way to make sense of it. Or again, large variation listings, drilling down and getting data on a SKU level tells me nothing, because you have hundreds of SKUs across that listing. What should I do with this listing? I can't base that analysis on a single SKU. So that's why, again, the way I've kind of just learned to like zoom up and zoom up and zoom up, and what information can I look at that then helps me make sense of this thing that makes my brain hurt on a lower level, and then diving back down into the weeds and figuring out what action steps do I need to take. It's the analysis has to come from a higher level, but the action steps have to be taken at the base level.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, how do you marry those two views, and what's the most efficient way to do that?
Yeah. And, I think too, just like you mentioned, you sort of like work your way up to it. And I think a lot of it happens by chance, right? I didn't sit around and necessarily seek out like, man, I'd love to work. Okay, I've worked on a couple of accounts that are relatively small, and now I'd love to work on a gigantic one that spends a lot. And now I'd like to work on one that spends a lot but only has like 3 SKUs. And then I'd like to work on one that spends a lot but has like 3,500 SKUs. And it just sort of happens. And I think that now, today, I still see people who maybe have 3, 4, 5 years of experience in marketing on Amazon, but all their experience comes from, a 1 ASIN account, a 5 ASIN account, a 10 ASIN account. And then I've seen them really hit like bump up against the walls of their skills when they are greeted with a 500, 5,000, a 50,000 SKU account. And that's what this episode is for. It's for sort of like, how do you shift what it is that you do? How do you allocate time? How do you think about this? And I think it's one of the most fascinating things, because once you go large account management and your mind sort of begins to do it that way, I think you carry that down to when you shift back to a smaller SKU account, like back to down to like a 5 ASIN account. And I think that is such an incredible skill that I hope to sort of share here, because I think it really does change you, because it dramatically increases your efficiency. It dramatically changes your strategic thinking about an account. You don't get so lost in the weeds, and you really begin to focus on the big things that matter. So clothing is a fantastic example. I see this a lot in like industrial type stuff. Like you're selling a screw, and the screw can be a million different sizes in terms of length, width, weight, diameter, whether it's Phillips head or flathead, all the different things. You end up with accounts that are easily, it's like one product. They're all screws, but then there's like 45,000 of them.
Yeah.
So I guess how has it changed you? Like, how do you think when you have a conversation with someone who's only has experience with, small SKU accounts, and then you have conversations with people that have had large SKU accounts, or do you notice anything differently in the way that people talk about PPC campaigns or think about PPC campaigns or spend their time on PPC campaigns? What are some things that you notice?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess one thing would be efficiency. And the thing is, we should all try and be efficient. But some of us had to go through it and be forced to be efficient because the task load is simply insurmountable otherwise. And so it's not that you can't accomplish the same thing, but if you can accomplish the same thing quicker, and like you said, it's the way your brain has to work to figure it out. And I think it also, you start viewing things almost in two different layers. So you do a lot more zooming out, but in the zooming out, when it's very large. So for instance, we might look at the ACOS on this account is 50%. We need to get it to 20. Okay, and a single product account, you're still looking at that picture, but your layers underneath that and the components are much simpler just because they can be. You're like, okay, so if my ACOS is this, I need to get down. Okay, I probably need to go and find all my ACOS keywords and lower the bid. And that would be the correct assumption. But when you're faced with a very large account, that again, when I said you have to zoom down to the base layer and make the actual changes, that's still the actual changes you should be making. But the question is, where should you be making those changes, and how effective on the grander scale are those base changes going to be on your actual like total objective? So I think that's kind of the way you have to, like I was saying, like you zoom out and then you zoom in. It's not because the things we're actually doing as an end result are going to be any different. It's prioritizing where we're doing them and where we're spending our time, and looking at things kind of I really love like percentages of total. That tells you so much about the account. So looking at what are the components of this total, what is the largest component of this total? And then I know if I make changes to the largest component that has the biggest impact on this, top line performance, then I can be certain that I'm going to actually be moving the needle in the direction that I need to be, versus going and doing a whole bunch of optimizations. And we'll probably get to like, how do you look at this? What are the components? Like, how should you be like evaluating things? But if I'm going and doing a whole bunch of optimizations on a product that only makes up 1% of the total spend, I'm only moving the needle on 1% of total. And if you look at things in, layers of importance, that's not actually going to do, it's going to do drop in the bucket movement towards what I'm actually trying to accomplish with the account.
You're talking about, imagine you had a product that contributes, 1% or less of overall sales. It wouldn't make sense for you to go in and optimize the product title for that, because even if the product title works out amazingly and you 5x the sales for this product, maybe you took it from 0.5% of overall sales to, even if you 5x'd it, it still wouldn't be that impactful to the overall account ACOS. That's what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah. And, along with that, if you think of the activities that you could spend, I think this is an interesting way to think about it. When you have one product and one product alone, 100% of your activities for that week are dedicated to one product. Now, all of a sudden you have two products. How do you divide your time? Well, even if you were magically able to do a 50-50 split, now all of a sudden you're dedicating 50% of your time to each product. Now, all of a sudden, when you have 100 products, you can't possibly spend 1% of your time evenly. To your point, you need to make decisions about what's going to get your prioritized focus. And then from there, you might spend, on certain weeks, you might spend 50% of your time on 3 products. You might spend 75% of your time on the top 10 products. You might spend, 80-20%. You might do the classic 80-20. You might spend almost all of your time on your top 10 products. And then if you have 100 products total, those extra 90, maybe you only spend 10% of your time just sort of scanning through them, seeing if there's anything out of whack, really egregious, right? And I think this sort of segues really nicely into, what activities are you actually doing for the high priority things, the lower priority things, determining that, and then sort of how do you balance things that you can do at scale, things that you do that don't scale. So how do you think about those things? Because I based off what you were saying about how, if a product is only going to move the needle an infinitesimal amount, it might not get your attention that week. And truthfully, it wouldn't make sense even if you had a staff of 10. It might never be ROI positive to go and optimize that product that has 0.1% of your overall sales compared to the extra 10,000 products you have, right? So it's not necessarily a matter of like man hours or people hours to go and work on the account. It's a matter of where can you actually get an ROI on your time? And I think that's a really crazy idea, because if you have one product, you wouldn't let a month go by without thinking like, should I be optimizing my product title? Is that SEO optimized enough? Like, am I tracking my rankings for this one product? Am I doing all the things that I can do? Am I looking at the search query performance for this one product? Am I looking at the brand metrics for this one product? Am I looking at competitors for this one product? It would be crazy to not do those things in the course of a month if you have one product. But when you have 10,000, you have to say there's going to be hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of products that I'm not going to look at a rank tracking report for. I'm not going to run the search query performance report for that specific product, because even if I slam dunk it and it double it or increase, or, it's still not going to be that impactful. You really have to pick and choose where you focus your time. Anyway, I just talked a lot. Do you think about things in a similar way?
Yes, I really do. And I think you had a great point on the things that you were pulling out to, am I going to spend extra time? Because to me, and that was something we talked about, and I mean, you definitely agree with, is there are certain things that you can do on a larger scale. So for instance, bid adjustments. We're not saying never take a look at those products and don't optimize them. No. Like, you should be adjusting bids on your entire account. You should be analyzing where you're out of budget on your entire account. You should be looking at, where am I working well on placement percentages? Where can I increase those? You should be looking at what search terms are appearing in my search term reports. Does it make sense for me to relaunch campaigns? Do I have auto campaigns for this? At what level am I on in this product launch? So if I'm launching a product, well, then I definitely need to be looking at like top keywords and expanding those keywords. So there's all these best, I guess what I think of when I think of allocating time is, where do I go outside of best practices and spend that extra? Because that's where an account really benefits from somebody who really knows what they're doing on the ads. It's when you take it 2 steps beyond, 3 steps beyond, 4 steps beyond, this is my general best practice and I know, and you start to get curious. So you look at search, you look at the search query reports. Where should I have a better impact on ranking? You go and look at your ranking and rankings of your top competitors, your BSR versus their BSR. How are we doing in the market? You go look at market share. How am I doing with this market share? Are we gaining? Are we losing? Let's look at month over month, year over year sales. Are we increasing? Are we decreasing? So it's all of these extra things that really is And it's not because we don't want to be able to do them at scale. It's that the way the data is pulled, the way the data is available, the way Amazon gives us these reports, just the human element that needs to come to that analysis. Currently, at some point, maybe AI is going to catch up to us, but currently, those are things that you have to do manually. So there's all these things that are, again, outside of this is my best practice, this is what I typically do, this is what I know based on experience, brings good results for an account. So you're still doing everything that's good. You're just looking at where can I level up my game? Where can I make the most impact spending, again, those extra man hours to do the analysis, to do that extra workload, because you should be doing it. But again, the question is, if I'm going to spend this time, where should I be spending it?
Yeah, exactly. So we're really getting to the meat of this episode, where it's like you have activities that scale, and you then have a process in which to identify areas to focus that don't scale, that are more time consuming, where you provide that human element and you make those decisions. So let's break those down. Those activities that scale. The first thing that comes up for me is definitely, for 1,000 SKU account, 10,000, 50,000 SKU account, having the SKU and or the ASIN in the campaign title. That's a must at this scale. Let's say you wanted to run a quick, total ACOS report or something like that. That's a quick download all of your campaigns, because it comes with the cost. You have the product in the campaign name, and you can easily compare that to a product performance report. So having the campaign names having the product names as some identifier in the campaign names, vital. I would also go as far to say adding the type of campaign in the campaign title, also vital, because then you can say, how is I use ASP for auto sponsor products. I use MSP KW for manual sponsor product, keyword based. So like all these little identifiers, you should be able to just super quickly run your analysis for all these different cohorts, right? And again, you have the thing at the top of the scale, and then I'm able to quickly get some data. Oh, how are my automatic sponsored products doing? Oh, they're behaving outside my KPI range. I know what to do next. I can then sort of zero in on that. So that's definitely an activity that scales. You mentioned bid optimization. I mean, hey, this is what bulk files were invented for, doing bids. Thinking in buckets, bid buckets, when it comes to bulk files and big things like that. What other? So we have campaign naming. We have bulk file management, or sort of bid optimization at scale. Anything else at scale that comes up for you?
I think budget analysis, which is true. Budgets do have an impact on, it's kind of like, where should I allocate my budget? We were talking about at scale. So again, spending the extra time to kind of look at that analysis is probably good.
What do you mean by budget analysis?
Just saying, so at scale, I would say, hey, is something running out of budget? Does it make sense for me to increase the budget?
Right.
That would be the one that scales. The one that doesn't scale is, what percentage of my total spend is going to this product? Now which campaign is making up, the most impact on that total spend? And then how can I drill down into that? Does this budget allocation, or does it not make sense for this product?
Yeah. Inventory management, I feel like, is a big one with large SKU accounts. There's always a lot of emails going back and forth of, hey, I updated the inventory report. We're low on these 500 products. What do you do when sort of messages come through like that? Currently, the system we have is like, we'll try to keep a shared spreadsheet, shared Google Sheet with the client, and then just ask them to email us when they update it, so then we can go look at that. That ends up being sort of like a bulk file creation, where again, we have the product names. So we have the product names in the campaign titles. So that becomes like a bulk file upload, and we're reducing budgets on those things. Is there anything else that you do for situations like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we currently do more. We had done that in the past. And that worked pretty well. But as you can imagine, it's quite tedious, and the clients never update you in time, and they're like, "Oh, I forgot, I'm running out of this tomorrow," and you're like, "Wait, you should have told me because I just launched 5 more campaigns." So what we have a software that we use. I always tell everyone, it's like it's way more overkill than I need to have for just ad management, because it has access to things like inventory and review analysis and all of those stuff. The team got so bogged down by doing those kind of things at scale that we just do that. And that one, there's message alerts to us that identify if stuff is going out of scale. And the one thing that I like really appreciate is it gives us the monthly financial impact of things going out of stock, so we can gauge how much of an impact it's going to have on the total account, which has actually been really nice.
Love it. What else are activities that you think of when you think of at scale? Does campaign structure come up for you at scale? Like, lots of times high SKU accounts are launching, potentially hundreds of products a year. It's always helpful to like have a basic setup that you use almost for all the products. Do you think that's something that you do at scale with large SKU accounts?
Yeah, absolutely. Campaign structure becomes super important. We try, if we can, avoid like multi-ad group campaigns. If we run across one that's absolutely crushing it, we're not going to turn it off. But we found that, again, especially in the inventory, or we try our best to not mix. We look at things on a listing level. So we try and not mix listings variations into a campaign, because at that point, if they say, okay, I want to, like you said, inventory is going out of stock, we need to reduce our spend on this product. Well, if you adjust the campaign budget for that one campaign, you're adjusting it for multiple listings. It becomes an issue. So we, again, try and just keep it the super lean, clean as we can. I agree with you. That's a really important one. Another one that I think is pretty good is just going through, because there are some times where you'll have like multi-variation listings, and maybe some of those variations have been put into an ad group. Just going through and doing an analysis to make sure that you are advertising the best variations. That one is not too difficult to do at scale if you know what you're doing with formulas in a bulk file. You can say, hey, where are my multi-variation products in my account or in my ad groups? Do I have any of these that are underperforming? And if I do pause these ones, how many are left active in the ad group?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, all of these like activities that you do at scale for large accounts is actually the easiest part of managing, like all the basics, right? Bid management, search term management, campaign structure, inventory management, like all of those things are actually the easy part. And then I would say the hard part is determining where to dedicate your limited time for the things that don't scale. And the way I like to think about it is like on one side, you have all the things that you do at scale, bid optimization, campaign naming, inventory, the way that you manage inventory and going out of stock, the way that you do product launches with campaign structure. And then you have like a bridge to the other side, which is things that don't scale. And in between, the thing that connects these two islands, that bridge, I would say, is a immense amount of dashboards and reporting, because it tells you where to focus your time. It tells you where to go in deeper and do those deeper levels of analysis. So let's talk a little bit about what those reports you like to look like. What comes up for you when it comes to large account reporting that might be different with a normal sized account of just a couple of ASINs?
Yeah. So like I said, we do manage several clothing brands, which again, at some point, if you've used things on a child SKU or even a child ASIN level, the reports don't become actionable. And so because of that, like you said in the beginning, a lot of these things have come through looking at things a certain way and going, okay, that doesn't give me the information that I need to make the decision. How else can I look at that information? What information would I need to be able to, again, make this analysis or decision? So what we've done is we roll things up to the listing level, and we will build a report that gives us, I'm going to have to remember what all of them are, definitely total sales We like to look at total spend, ad sales. We like to look at total sessions, the unit session percentage or the conversion rate for that product. And then also, you would need ad orders and ad clicks. So you can also calculate the ad conversion rates for those. And then off of the ad sales and ad spend, you can also calculate your classics, ACoS, total ACoS. And we also have found that looking at ad sale percentage has been very beneficial to us. And then on top of all of these data points, you can just use sorting filters just to like sort highest or lowest. I'm also a huge fan of calculating 2% of total columns. That's simply taking how like this, total sales is one of them. So total sales divided by sum of total sales. What percentage impact does this product have on my total sales volume? And then doing the same analysis for for the ad spend. What percentage of the total ad spend? And just looking at these two percentages line by line, I did an audit account. They had one listing, and I think it was a single product listing, was making up 42% of the total spend volume, in the account, and it had 9% impact on the total sales volume. It was very apparent. It makes no sense for us to spend on this product. Yes, they were probably pushing, they were trying to push for that product to scale. And you probably will end up with more spend than, total sales allocations in that case. It would be expected. What is not to be expected is to have 4 times the amount of spend impact. So again, just looking at these things, impact of the total spend, impact of the total sales allows you to say, okay, so which of these, again, when we're talking about the layers and looking at components, which of these individual components has the greatest impact on the account? For tacos, it's total sales divided by ad spend. So if I'm trying to lower my total ACoS numbers, I need to lower my total spend without having an impact on my total sales. So then your question then becomes, okay, out of all of these products, which of them has the greatest impact on the total spend? And what I will find, pretty much guarantee you 100% of the time, if you have an account that is struggling to bring down total ACoS numbers, you will do this analysis and you'll look at the top sales contributors. That top sales contributor, or sometimes the second, third, and fourth, will have a very high total ACoS. If you had a product that had, say, let's go crazy, let's say it made up 80% of your total sales, and that one product was running at a total ACoS number of 5 points above your total ACoS targets. You're like, hey, I'm unprofitable if I'm 5 points above, right? Because it's doing 80% of your total sales, 80% of the total sales in your account are unprofitable. If I went down the line, maybe I had 10, 20 other products, I could get every single one of those ACoS down to essentially zero or total ACoS numbers, and I would still not be able to get my total ACoS under control because, again, 80% of these, 80% of my total products being sold in the account are unprofitable. So that tells me I need to focus on this one product. And so then the question then becomes, our deep analysis, where am I spending the most on this product? What does my ad structure look like? Am I overspending on some of my top keywords? Am I really moving the needle on ranking? Where can I dig into this one space of the account and then make the impact versus, again, going broad, everything, lower all my bids? What if all the bids that are technically over ACoS are all the other products that, again, we already established are not going to make the impact?
Yeah, it's almost like you're turning a large ASIN account into a small ASIN account by being like, oh, okay, these are the things that I'm focused on right now, for sure. I love that. So the bridge there is like this total ACoS spend revenue per product. That's the bridge. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I love that one. Another report that I like to use when managing at scale is like a ad type coverage per product performance. So it's, again, that's every single product that you have listed, and then like almost like checkboxes. Do I have an automatic sponsor product for it? Do I have a manual sponsor product keyword, manual sponsor product ASIN? Is it in a sponsored brand? do I have sponsored display? And then what I like to do there is, do I have all that? And like, what is the performance per product? So sort of similar to yours, where it has, product level performance. Next to it, I have, am I running it in all the different ad types? And the way that I like to use that is, it's like, oh, when I get around to doing, my bi-monthly like campaign creation, launch some campaigns, I know that informs me of what campaigns to launch. I can see, okay, I have this product, it's performing well, but I have no sponsored brands for it. I should probably launch some sponsored brands for it. So it allows me to sort of get really precise about what's the next 10, 20, 30 campaigns I can launch. They're going to have the highest degree of success. And I'm doing those with the best products. So I really like that report. I get a lot of value out of that report for sure.
Yeah, that's an awesome way to look at it. I love that. We do something similar. We have an analysis we built out that allows us to look at everything, or also drill down to like you said, that specific listings, and then just gauge like, hey, what is the ad spend? Another thing that I really like to classify on those, and this is getting, it gets more technical to be able to pull this kind of insights out, but we will categorize spend based on how many parent ASINs are in that particular campaign or technically ad group. And then we classify that spend as mixed or non-mixed. Because what we found is, again, going back to the analysis on like pulling back on a product, if it's mixed within another listing, then whatever you do to that one campaign is going to have impact on other products as well. So you can't just dig into the one specific thing because your ad structure is a mess, which again is going back to something else that is unscalable, because really unpiecing ad structure needs to be manual. You need to have that deep analysis if you don't want to like screw something up in the account. But we'll also really highlight, okay, this, maybe this one product we need to pull back on ad spend. So which typically, I mean, you can reduce bids, but again, that's going to be across additional products. So we'll look at, what is my mixed and non-mixed ad spend? How good is my structure in a way that allows me to do those changes that I need to do? Or do I need to go fix my ad structure before I can do anything granular?
Yeah. Another sort of big macro report that I like is campaigns that went up or campaigns that went down over, whether it be 14, 7, or 30-day timeframes. Because so often we're sitting there with a large SKU account wondering, why was there a change or where was there a change? And I love being able to sort of say, oh, okay, this campaign's revenue drops 20%. And then if you have good campaign naming, you could see, okay, let me see the other campaigns that product is in. It's like, oh, okay, I moved some things around and now the revenue's over there. Or you do that search, oh, wow, the revenue for this entire product is down over the last 30 days. I can go make decisions there. So all of these reports that we're mentioning are just a way for you to figure out where to focus. And I think that even the takeaway for even small SKU accounts is you should be doing this kind of stuff anyway. So there's so many ratios. We've had amazing episodes on like ratios to look at that like aren't listed in the ad console. There's all these different things that you could evaluate where, it's vital for you to know your total lay cost per product, even if you only have 5 products, because that's where you can spend your time. It's vital to know your percentage of total, even if you only have 5 products, because that's where to focus. That's where you get the biggest ROI on your time. And I think that whole concept of like, where can you spend your time to get the biggest ROI on your time? That's like what all these reports are pointing to. And it's extra true in large SKU accounts. And you can kind of get away with it you can kind of get away with like inefficient prioritization with small accounts, because you'll eventually get around to the one that's the most important anyway, if you're just getting in there. But I think if you want to be efficient, if you want to really prioritize your time properly, it's just vital to have all these things to tell you what's the most important stuff, where can you dedicate your time to make the most impact. So when you're thinking about launching sponsor brand video, you don't have to launch sponsor brand video for 5,000 products at a time. What are going to be the 10, 20, 30 most impactful products to launch sponsor brand videos for? That's true and then you can spend more time thinking about, well, what should those 20 product videos look like? Like, how can we really like blow it out of the water for those for those and get really creative. And then, could you do some kind of templatized video for the extra 4,800?
Yeah.
And that's where you can use technology where it's like, oh, let me do like these like drag and drop product videos for like the other, 4,000 products that I have. But where do I want to dedicate the time and really push it over the top for those top ones? And where do I want to look at the search query performance for like those top products? So much of this activity is for focusing, prioritizing your time, so that you know exactly the next step. And this concept of like, I need to focus most on this handful of products. Even if you don't have a bunch of products, similar things apply. Like, where do you focus your time? Do I need to focus on campaign creation? Do I need to focus on organic sales? Do I need to focus on click-through rate optimization? Like, you're doing the same kind of concept where it's like, what are my top level metrics? And then how do I zoom in and focus my time? So vital. It's super hard to do. We're sort of surrounded by little hacks and systems and like, here's the perfect way to do this and that and the other thing. But in reality, it's like determining what actions you should do is so vital, because we're just like drowning in activities to do.
Also, it's your great point on like launching video ads. I think it also tells you what actions to not do. And that's also an important thing.
Ooh, what do you mean?
So for instance, going back to the total ACoS numbers, I might be looking at that product and going, I need to scale it. I need to scale it. Like maybe I'm unprofitable. Maybe I'm still looking at scale. But if you have a total ACoS problem, that's an ad spend problem. So if you have an ad spend problem, does it make sense to launch those video ads because you're just going to be adding additional ad spend in there? And then again, looking at it on a per product level. So you might look at it on a total account level and say like, well, okay, my talk list is high, so therefore I need to fix ad spend. But, these two low priority products that are, they don't have video ads associated with them. So maybe just doing that analysis, oh, I need to go launch video ads for these because they lack video ads. Then zooming up and going, okay, wait, actually, I have a total ACoS problem. So therefore, introducing additional ad spend is not the correct evaluation thing to do right now. So if you can get the information, I mean, obviously that can be looked at on an account level. The one I just talked about, looking at an account, should I be adding ad spend? Should I be looking at ways to optimize ad spend? That's not that difficult to do. But when it comes to a per product level, seeing is this product profitable or not? Maybe I need to, again, optimize, refine my current ad structure before I start layering in additional things that, again, are just going to increase in that ad spend. Or looking at things like, okay, I need to increase the sales volume. But one thing I love looking at is unit session percentage versus the ad conversion rate, and saying how different is my ad conversion rate versus my unit session percentage. If you're going super broad with your ads, or you don't, for some reason you're doing targeting that doesn't resonate well with your audience, you're going to see a lower conversion rate than your unit session percentage. Most times what I find is the ad conversion rate is higher. And so if I see a ad conversion rate that's lower, that's my clue on maybe I don't need to go, start increasing all my budgets on stuff. I probably need to find targets that work better on this.
Yeah. So let's get to final thoughts here. My final thought on managing large ASIN accounts and even small ASIN accounts, I would put out a challenge to anyone who markets on Amazon, which is, if you cannot determine what the next action should be in your account without logging into Ad Console. So like, you're not even looking at your ads inside Amazon. You're looking at reports, you're looking at your ratios, you're looking at all these other things that tell you what actions to take. If you can't do that, that's like your homework. You should be able to determine what steps you should take in your actual campaigns by not even looking at your campaigns, but by looking at your ratios, your reporting dashboards, all the things that inform you of what your next action should be. That's my final thought from this episode.
I like it. And I agree.
Any other final thoughts on managing large ASIN accounts?
Other than, I know it can seem tedious to put these reports together, especially when you're first puzzling through it. I would say it is time well spent. And honestly, just pulling the reports and doing VLOOKUPs, or like Michael was saying, having good campaign naming structure, that will get you very far. It's not as difficult as you think it is. And really, the hard part is putting together the report. Once you have the information, you're already currently making decisions on the account level that reflect everything I was just saying. Like, oh, total ACOS is high, ad spend inflow. Like if you're managing and you're comfortable with managing smaller accounts, it's just learning to take that same analysis, that same intuition, and apply it on a still somewhat granular but a little bit more broader scale. And then the other thing is getting confident and comfortable with saying this is where I need to take the action, and then just going and taking that specific action.
Very well said. Well, Elizabeth, I think we just made it a lot easier for people to manage small SKU accounts or large SKU accounts. Thank you so much for coming back on the show. It's always a pleasure. And everyone else, I'll see you next week here on the PPC Den podcast.